guys, how you doing? I'm here to do my August wrap-up. Month of August for me. It was a relaxed reading month. I didn't do any kind of readathons or anything, and I'm so grateful that I didn't. We were so busy. I had my oldest's birthday party that we planned, and then working, and of course, just nice to take a little bit of a break, just to read books that I just want to read at my own pace and not have to speed through anything because I'm trying to meet a deadline. So it was a good reading month for me. It wasn't the best month I've ever had, but I read 6 books, and I kind of read 2,231 pages. Kind of, and I will explain that in a little bit. So altogether, I mean, the quality of the books that I read were really, really nice. I gave 0 1-stars, 0 2-stars. I gave 4 3-star ratings, no 4 stars, and I gave 2 5-star ratings. So first off, I'm resolving to not making these videos crazy long because I'm going to start doing more actual book reviews rather than waiting to the end of the month and talking about all the books that I read in detail and making my wrap up 20 minutes long. Like, nobody wants to watch a 20-minute long wrap up. So I'm going to just sort of go briefly over the books that I read, give you the star rating, a little tiny summary of what I thought about the book, and then we'll go from there. So the first book this month that I'm going to be talking to you about, I don't have a physical copy of. I need to get over not having some sort of visual aid. I mean, we're readers. We like to look at things. So I'm sorry I don't have anything to show you, but I'm sure you've all read it. It's Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. I got really excited last month when I read Landline, and I'm like, I gotta read more Rainbow Rowell. And this book I gave a 2.75 out to. It wasn't really that great to me. I think the characters were really flat. I think it was a cool concept to write a book that's mostly, like, more than half of it was written in emails that, an individual who, they all work in an office. It's a story about a man who does, like, internet security, and he reads flagged emails and, sends warnings out to people that are on inappropriate sites at work. But I guess he starts intercepting emails between 2 colleagues, gets really involved in their lives, falls in love with one of them. It's a lot like that one movie with Robin Williams back like 10-15 years ago where he was like this photo developer. It was kind of a thriller, very creepy. It kind of was like that in the way that it was kind of creepy. I didn't really dig this main character, Lincoln. He didn't seem realistic. I mean, he was described as this big, buff, macho, muscular guy who's super hot, super attractive, but then he's this major nerd who does D&D, and he can't talk to women. He's too nervous about that, about talking to girls. It just wasn't believable. I don't know. It was like the male version of the Mary Sue, which I guess some people call it the Gary Stu. He sounded very much like a Gary Stu to me, and it was just distracting. The story itself was kind of cute and light, but as far as, like, really getting involved with the characters, not so much for me. So, wasn't really my favorite book this month. Actually, it was my least favorite book this month. So the next book I'm going to be talking to you about is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I gave this a 3 out of 5, and I feel like I'm gonna, like, people are disappointed in that rating. Most people rate this a 5-star book, and this is what I think about it. I think the language is very, very beautiful. It is really, really well written. For me, it took me, like, I started reading this book probably a month and a half ago, and it's, it's only it's like 380 pages. It's not really that long. It's so dense. It read very much like a Charles Dickens novel. If you kind of like writing kind of dating back to then, you might really like this. It was almost a little too dense in language for a light read. And the characters, to me, once again, they felt so flat. There was a couple that were standouts for me, but altogether, it was just an meh kind of book. And that was disappointing because I had heard amazing things about this book. And also, once again, I think it's a genre thing for me. I think if you really like more fantasy, magic kind of genre, you might really, really like this book. And I can absolutely see why someone, like, I would highly recommend this to people who like fantasy and magic and a story about a circus that comes to town and illusionists and this, game that has to be played with magic. I think that would really be something that you would love. It's a very well written book. For me, it wasn't really my genre, but I really am glad that I finally read it. It took me so long to get through. Just because it wasn't that compelling and I wasn't flipping, I couldn't give it more than a 3. So that's it. Okay, so the next book that I'm talking about, once again, I feel like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like I did not like it as much as other people did, and I really think I'm going to make a review about this because I really want to talk about this book. I think it's very important to talk about, and because it's the content matter, and because what I'm going to tell you about any of it is going to be a spoiler, I'm not going to really say anything about it in this video. I don't want to give any spoilers away, and talking about it at all would. And that was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I just didn't love it like everybody else loved it. And like I said, I don't want to go too much into detail about it. What can I say about this book? I think I'm not a big Colleen Hoover fan. I liked Confess. I read it last month, so I heard great things about this, picked it up, and it kind of fell flat for me. In a lot of ways, that is not this book's fault. Once again, I want to talk about this separately in a video that has like full disclosure. I don't want anyone to be watching this video who has not read it and doesn't want spoilers. I will say that I think it's written okay. I personally don't think that Colleen Hoover is the best writer. So the writing is okay. It was compelling. I read through very, very fast. Like I really wanted to know what happened next. I will say that it was a page turner. I really, really wanted to know what was going on. I think it portrayed an honest relationship. It didn't seem like a fake, made up, fluffy relationship that maybe some like modern contemporary romances have. It felt authentic, and I appreciate that. I think most of the characters, most of the time, were really complex, multidimensional, real people. So I really appreciated that. But there's other parts of this book that I can't talk about that is kind of why I ended up giving it a 3 instead of like the 5 that everyone else has. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, watch for this book review. Hopefully I'm going to have it up in a little bit because I have to talk about this book. So the next book, once again, is another 3-star rating, and this is called Pretty Little Mistakes, a do-over novel by Heather McElhatton. And I found this at my used bookstore for $2, and first off, just the spine stuck out to me. I saw these really cool colors, and I walked past it a couple times. My eye kept going to it, and then eventually, like on the third pass, I said I had to pick it up and see what this is, and I'm so glad that I did, because it was so fun. It is, remember back when you were like in middle school, maybe if you read a lot of like the Goosebumps books, I think there were tons of those choose your own ending books. This is a choose your own ending book for adults. So like, there's a chapter with passage, and then you're faced with the decision. So if you go home with this guy, go to page 127 and the story continues. Or if you go back to your apartment alone, go to this other page and the story continues. So the story's constantly branching off based on the decisions that you are making. So this kind of reflects why in the beginning of the video I said I kind of read 2,231 pages because this is a 512 page book. But I didn't read all these pages because you don't read this book from front to back. You're skipping constantly throughout the book to kind of follow the storyline. And there's like 150 different endings, basically. Like you start at the very beginning, and then from there your choices all determine how the story goes. I'll say one thing. I had so much fun reading this book. It was the coolest thing. I've never seen an adult version of this. And I was reading it like for 2 or 3 or 4 days straight, and I kept going back and choosing different things, going back and choosing I would die, or I'd have a really bad ending, or I'd become a drug dealer, or the story would end, and I kept going back and forth. Oh, my phone's ringing. I kept going back and forth. Kind of getting myself to a different part of the story and finding a different ending, and it was so much fun to do. I will say, I only gave it a 3 because I think the appeal kind of wore off pretty quickly. This is something I could possibly see myself picking back up here and there if I just want to read for an hour, because a storyline could end in an hour. It's very quick. I think that's another one of the downfalls, because there's 150 different endings. I think that's too much. I know that like she obviously wants to have a lot of choices in the writing, but I feel like because you're dividing this into 150 stories, they're all pretty short, and you can read a story in like an hour. And maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you just want to sit down and kind of briefly read while you're waiting for the bus. This might be a really good idea. But the stories would end too quickly, or they were unsatisfying, and kind of just very fluffy. But the writing itself is really good. Like, I would read more from this author. So I gave it a 3 because, like I said, it's not, you know, it's not something that I can really read for a long period of time. And the individual stories, I think there were too many. I'd rather there maybe be like 50 stories in here, and then maybe getting stories with more substance rather than, like, you know, some stories that can just be done in 20 minutes, you know, and then you have to start all the way back and find the last place that you made a decision to do something different. But I think this is really fun. For $2, I had like a blast reading it for like 4 days straight. So yeah, and I think I read that she has another one coming out, or maybe it's already come out. I think this book is maybe like, what was it, 10 or 8 years old. So I think she's got another one. Maybe I'll pick that one up if I can find it. So yeah, it's super fun. So once again, the last book to talk about is a book that I don't have a physical copy of, sorry, and it's Wonder by R.J. Palacio. I'm not really sure if that's how you pronounce his name, and I'm sure most of you have either, if you haven't read it, you've at least heard of it. And to me, this was a 5-star book. I thought it was so well written. It's about a young boy entering 5th grade, I think. His name is August. And he's got a really severe facial deformity, and he's trying to navigate school. And as we all know, 5th grade, 4th grade, 6th grade, that middle school age is rough on kids. Kids are bullied. You know, peers are just way too honest, and they say hurtful things. And it's just really the story of this kid who has been homeschooled his whole life and then joins the public school system at this really sensitive, important time of a kid's life. And he kind of gets thrown to the wolves and has to sort of navigate school. I think that, I mean, I can't say too much about it other than it was so well written, and it was just very, like, it made me really sad as a mom, because it's, you know, it's hard to imagine, like, my kids are too young for school, but one day they're going to be in school, and it's just hurtful to think that any kid could have an experience with school when they're being bullied, or they don't feel welcome, or they're crying, and when they come home from school and their peers will understand them, and they feel isolated, and they feel just separated and feel different. And as a parent, you really can't do anything about that. You just can't change it unless you're going to take them out of school together, and that's not going to do them any good. So yeah, I just thought it was a really great story. I love the perspectives. The first half of the novel was all written from the kid's perspective. Second half of the novel was written from other people, like some friends, his sister, his sister's boyfriend, and then you got to experience him from another perspective, which was really, really cool. So I mean, I really liked it, and I'm glad that I finally read it. It's been out forever, and where have I been? And the last book that I have to talk about today was another 5-star book, and that is With Malice by Eileen Cook. And I'm gonna say that I haven't heard too much about this book. 2 other booktubers I know have read it, and one was Ariel Bissett. I mean, she, during last month's booktubeathon, she widely discussed this book because she was stuck on it for like 4 days, and she kept saying how much it was stressful and how it was crazy, and she was getting sucked in. And then I put that in the back of my mind, and then earlier this month, Peter from Peter Likes Books, who I have been obsessed with, I watch everything he puts out, I love him, he started reading this book, and he just spoke so highly of it, and I trust and love his opinion, and I think that he's got a really great eye. So I said, okay, well, that's it, I've got to pick this stupid book up. It's basically about a girl who wakes up one day in the hospital, and she's had a brain injury because she was in a really severe car accident. Her best friend was in the car with her. Her best friend died. And there's all this evidence piling up against her that she kind of intentionally caused this accident to kill her best friend. And she doesn't remember anything of what happened, but she knows she is innocent. This is her best friend from childhood. And so she's kind of sort of trying to figure out what's going on, try to regain her memory, trace her steps back, figure out what really happened, and kind of clear her name before she's incarcerated or, you know, held responsible. And it's got a really, really great twist. Right at the very end, I kind of, like, I think like a page before it happened, it all clicked and I figured it out. But it was like a wild ride. I was reading it. I thought it was a refreshing read. It was nice for once for an unreliable narrator to not be in a mental hospital. She was in a neuro rehab facility because she had to learn how to walk again, and she had the retrograde amnesia. So that was kind of a cool thing to watch, like to read a book like this from a neurological perspective rather than a psychiatric perspective. Personally speaking, I get really tired of reading books about psych hospitals and psychiatric conditions because that's what I do, and books never get it right. I don't want that to sound snobby, but they don't get it right. It makes me crazy. So it was cool to read a different kind of thing. I don't know. I would really read it. It's a thriller. It's young adult. The voice I think is really strong. The surprise at the ending, or the reveal at the ending, how it's revealed, is really, really well done. It's a page turner. I thought it was. I just loved it, and I love this freaking cover. Like, I love that. And I mean, yeah, I recommend probably the star of the month for me. All right, that's it, guys. That is my wrap up. And if you'd like to see a review about any of these books talked about in a little bit more length, just let me know down below. I really want to start writing doing a lot more reviews rather than bogging down these summary videos with all this discussion when I should just say, I read with Malice. It was a 5-star book. I recommend it. Moving on. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See ya!